Now that your RackFly has arrived, let's unbox it. Now that you've taken your RackFly out of the box, let's walk through the different attachments that came with it. The J-hook attachment works by attaching it to the back of your RackFly and then pulling this out and attaching just like you would a standardized J-hook.
We're going to attach it to the back of the RackFly using screws. Using the Allen key, we're going to tighten those up to keep it in place. And we're going to pull this out. Goes in like this on the side, through the hole in front, and it's secured. This makes it very quick and easy to change heights, like so.
Now let's talk about the slider. This slider will attach to the back of your RackFly, allowing you to easily adjust up or down on your squat rack, and can fit any squat rack.
You'll see in your package you'll have these two parts. This is the back and this is the front. We also have this, which is a pull pin. First up, I'm going to attach the pull pin to the back of the slider, and using these small bolts, I'm going to screw that in. Just loosely to begin with, so it can still move back and forth. This is going to be the back of the slider onto your squat rack. Then we're going to take the front part, holding it there. Now you may need to adjust this middle screw as well, just to make sure it fits. And this is on this side as well. And we can push them along, and using the hex key, we can loosen it off, just to make sure it fits in both. And push it together like so. Now we want to make sure that it's a snug fit, so it's going to be pressing against each side, this side, that side, and the back and the front. And we're going to do up these parts, just to keep it in place. But you don't want to do them up too tight, otherwise it won't move up and down. So we want to make sure it's pushed in here on these side and the front and back, so there's no gap in between here. Now, we want to move this so the pull pin is in the center of the holes, and we can tighten that up. We want to make sure that this can go up and down. This is quite tight, but you can loosen it with these two bolts at the back and the front. We also want to tighten up these bolts as well, so they push against front and back, and they create additional stability. So it's a matter of adjusting these bolts at the back and the front until you feel it's right. There's no slop or movement in it, and it slides up and down nice and easily. Now the next important part is we need to make this part exactly in the center of these holes, because this is where we are lining up the collar of the flywheel, or the rope of the flywheel, where it's coming out. So we've got 4 nuts. We can move this along here like this. We're going to make sure it's exactly in the center. Next, we're going to attach the back plate of the RackFly, and using these short bolts, I'm going to screw them on. And using your wrench, tighten them up. Next, we're going to place the RackFly onto the front of this. You'll see there are 4 screw holes, and these go onto the back of the RackFly. So taking these small nuts, we're going to start screwing them in from the back. And then we're going to take our 10mm wrench and tighten those up on all sides. And there you have it. It makes it very easy to move the RackFly up and down.
Now that your RackFly is attached to your squat rack, let's talk about our flywheels. Here is our red flywheel, which has an inertial load of 0.1. With the flywheel on your unit, take your end cap, and then we're going to screw it on the rod, tightening it all the way down. Make sure that there's no wiggle in your flywheel. Here's our larger blue flywheel. This has an inertial load of 0.05. The next is our yellow flywheel. This has an inertial load of 0.025. Here's one of our smaller flywheels. This has an inertial load of 0.0125. Here's another small flywheel. This has an inertial load of 0.00625. As you can see, the RackFly with all of our flywheels can hold all the way up to even 10 red flywheels. You can mix or match with any color, size, or inertial load. Now let's talk about the rope clamp and how to set it up on your RackFly. With 1 to 2 fingers at the bottom and your thumb on top, you can push them together to open up a slit in the middle there. Then take that rope from your RackFly, and while pushing it down, you can easily adjust anywhere from as close as possible to the RackFly all the way to the end. Now let's talk about the screen on the front of your RackFly.
You'll see from here we have the emergency stop button. We have a jog button, which allows you to go up and down in the menus and select. And we have a pair button, which also acts as a reset button for Bluetooth. So if you want to connect to Bluetooth and someone else is connected to it already, you can press the pair button and that will disconnect them and allow you to connect. So one of the first things we would want to do when we first turn the Exerfly on is go to the Calibrate screen, pull the rope out fully and press the Calibrate button, and you'll hear a beep to show that it's been calibrated in that correct location. Move down to Enable Motor. That noise tells you that the Exerfly is ready to be used. But if the emergency stop button is pressed in, then it won't work. You can adjust the boost from the screen as well. So this is the eccentric overload, and select that. Now, if you leave the unit for more than 5 minutes, the boost will automatically set back to 0 for safety. You can also disable the motor in this screen, and you can also wind up. So using the wind up will start beeping and steadily increase the beeping until it automatically winds you in. You don't have to use it. You can actually spin the flywheel with your hand to get it moving. You've got the wind up function, which will start the motor wind up and beep progressively faster until the wind up happens. And we can press the emergency stop button to interrupt it.
Now that your RackFly is completely set up, let's talk about our app and the integrations. To turn your RackFly on in order to utilize the app through Bluetooth, it needs to be plugged in via the bottom. Once your RackFly is plugged in, please go onto your app and connect your device. In order to calibrate your unit, go into the app, pull out the rope until there's full tension, and hit calibrate. I wanted to walk you through a common exercise that I see and actually happens to be one of my favorite. This is gonna be a Pallof press. I found the best place to start is usually with this blue, or our 0.05 inertial load. We call this our hypertrophy or our hybrid flywheel. This is in between that higher force, which we see in the red, or some of the smaller flywheels that we are more velocity dominant or rehab dominant. This is always a great place to start, again, because it's kind of in the middle. You get a mix of both high force or high velocity. This will allow your user to play around with both. It's also great to start because you can achieve pretty much every exercise that you want with this blue. Always start with the blue, play around with your exercise, get comfortable with how to set it up, and then as you get more and more comfortable with this, then you can start to vary those different flywheels. So I like to use the handle up top here, and then on the back there's a little tab, and that way I can easily adjust this slider to wherever I see fit. That might be a little bit low, might take it up just one more notch. In order to get started here, with any movement, but specifically this movement, I wanna find the end range, wherever I wanna finish my rep. So I'm standing here, just pull the rope all the way out, making sure that nothing is wrapped around the inside here. Once you can see that the rope is pulled straight out, you're gonna take that rope clamp and adjust it accordingly. With my thumb on the top, pressing onto that rubber bit, my fingers behind on the piece of black at the back, I'm gonna open a little bit of a slit in between these two red rectangles and pull the rope through. Now, if I'm doing this by myself, I'm gonna try and find the end of the range of motion the best that I can. So let's say that there, I wanna finish the rep here. I'm gonna let go of that clamp, head back over to this RackFly, and in order to get this thing started, I'm gonna spin our flywheel. Now, as we're getting started here, and before I start this movement, one thing to take into consideration is figuring out how many warm-up reps you wanna do. I found that usually 4 is the best. The first 2 I just take to get used to it, and then the next 2 I start increasing velocity or force depending on the movement. Just getting in a nice easy groove here. allowing for that rope to get smooth, winding around the inside. This is rep number 3 of my warm-up, and then rep number 4, and now I'm into this movement here. Throughout this movement, there's a couple of different ways that we can look at this, not only from a programming stance, but an adaptation stance. Every single rep can change based on you as the user. We call this user-defined. I can go for a really heavy, high force movement. I can think about a slow eccentric movement, fast eccentric, or even more velocity. When first starting to use our RackFly, there's a couple of things to take into consideration. One of those is being on how to stop or walk away from our unit. So here with a simple row exercise, as I get this flywheel going, when I want to finish that rep, whatever concentric movement I apply then replicates back into the eccentric. So the best way to stop our unit is back down in the eccentric. And then you can hang this up or drop it down whenever you're done. Another way to get started on the RackFly is picking 3 exercises. With those 3 exercises, don't get too crazy in depth with programming, just get comfortable with those 3 exercises on our RackFly. As you're looking to get into more in-depth and higher force movements, that's where you can start to load even 1 red, 2 reds, or all the way up to 10 red flywheels on our unit.